Hi, I'm Laura Henry, and I am a craft dabbler. Today I'm going to be making this card for my daughter who just moved to California, and I'm going to be using Cricut Design Space and various images and fonts that are in Design Space. Some of them are with Cricut Access with the subscription, and some of them are from Close to My Heart, and some are just free images. To begin, I'm going to bring in a rectangle from the basic shapes, and then I'm going to resize it 11 inches by 5.5 inches, and I'm going to change the color to white, which is what my card base is going to be. And then over in shapes, I'm going to bring in the score line, and I'm going to make that 5.5 inches, which is the same height as my card. And then I'm going to copy and paste that so that I have two score lines. I set the left edge of my card over in the 1 inch position as far as the coordinates go, and then that's going to help me to line up my score line exactly where I want it to be. So the first score line I want to be at 2 3/4 inch, but since I set the left side of my card at 1 inch, I'm going to make that score line start at 3 3/4 inch so that it will be 2 3/4 inches over from the left side of the card. Then using the alignment, I'm going to align them so that it's centered vertically. And then I would need to select the score line and then the card base and attach it. And here I actually forgot to attach it until um, later. So I did the center line, then I went back and attached the left fold line. Next, I'm going to select another rectangle from the basic shapes, and I'm going to make the mats for each little panel of the card. So I made the first one 5.5 or 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, and then the other two 2.5 by 5 1/4, and I changed the color to blue. To make the front panel that pops out, I'm going to select that card base and copy and paste it, and then I'm going to change the dimensions of it to be the same width, and I like the score lines where they are. It just needs to be shorter and then flipped around. And I made it, I believe, 1.5 inches, and you can change that up a little bit for your own card. And then I'm going to make a little to be quite honest, I'm not sure why I brought that black square in, but next I'm going to go in and look for images that I want to have in the card. And this is actually my second card that I made, so I know exactly which images that I want. And so, and which keywords to look for to find the images that I want that are just right for this card. This project took me 2 hours. The second time I did it, took a little longer the first time when I was really searching for just the right images. So, and I probably could have saved a little time the second time gluing things together while I was cutting out paper, but I wanted to show all of that on film, so I had to wait till I was done cutting before I started gluing together. So a little over 2 hours it would take to make this project. So my daughter moved near San Francisco, so I knew I wanted city buildings in the background. I wanted the Golden Gate Bridge. I wanted a car. I didn't like the guitar that was on top of the car, so I decided to put a TV screen. And so I found that TV that I liked, and she has a bulldog. And so then I knew that panel in the front, I wanted the road to fit on there. And so I just found the right icons and or images, and then I cut them down. The square I used, I made it this exact width of that panel, which was 2.5 inches, but I wanted to center it onto that road so that it was on both sides of those little dotted lines. So I centered it exactly, and then I used that other leftover piece as part of the other panel. Then I went over and I color sank it with another gray. And pretty soon you'll see me sinking my colors and reducing the amount of different colors that I'm using. Then I cut these little strips to put back behind that dotted line, and I'm going to change those to yellow so that it looks like the dotted lines on a robe. And then You can see I just selected it, and then in the layers panel I changed the color. Then on the far right side, I'm just typing in text that says you have arrived, and then I opened up the fonts and I used the filter to find ones that you could write, because I'm going to use a pen in my Cricut to write out those words. Once you have the writing and it was saved in the right size, then I needed to attach it to that layer so that it writes on that layer. You have to remember to attach things when you're putting one layer with another. So here I isolated the layer with that 66 and those stars because I didn't need the stars, and so then I sliced them away from the 66 and then deleted them out. So all I have is that Route 66. And here, my first card that I made, I liked the size of the Route 66 sign better. This one was a little bit big. So now I'm just resizing the pine trees that I made. And then I took that panel out and I duplicated it, and I didn't end up using that. But I just need a slice out of those mountains. And so I wanted to get the exact width right. And so I had that extra panel over there to help me know how big to make the slice. So I'm just kind of lining it up where I think it needs to be. And then you have to, if things are layered together, you need to separate those before you can slice. So you can't slice grouped images. So you just have to ungroup those first. So there I had duplicated that little panel. I didn't need the duplicate because then I could use that sliced piece and it's in the perfect position. So you just have to select the layers that you want to slice, and it can be no more than two, and they cannot be grouped together. So once I had my mountain slice, I grouped it together just so I could move it around again. And then I put it all the way to the back and then moved it forward just so visually right now I could see what it's going to look like. So I isolated, that was a 2-layer piece, and I isolated that so that I could just have the layer that had all of the lines in it on that bridge, and then I just scaled it to the right width, which was 5 1/4 wide to fit in that background. Next, I believe I'm gonna work on that television, maybe. No. No, I'm making the little panels. So this, where that bottom strip that with the road, it's going to pop out and it's going to create a little box. So I want my girl and my bulldog, they're going to be on that strip with some score lines on it. And then I'm going to weld a background piece to that strip so that it has a place for the person to stand on, and that little strip will get hidden behind the little box. When you see the card, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's a little hard to describe. So I wanted to make my score lines, the width of that little panel is 2.5 inches, 2 3/4 inches. And I wanted my score line in between the score lines to be just a little bit shorter than that. In the end, they were a little bit too close together. So I wish that I had just gone ahead and made them 2 3/4 inches apart, because I ended up kind of having to make my own fold line, and it had a little bit of adhesive that was hard to remove, and you'll see me trying to finagle with that a little bit later. So I think it would have been just fine to make my score lines exactly the same width as the score lines up above. But right there, I'm just trying to center that box, and then I'm just trying to, I'm just fiddling with it and visually trying to put those score lines just inside the other score lines. And like I said, there was a little bit too much of a gap there. But, hindsight 2020. So, again, you have to attach those score lines to that card base. And I duplicated them because I have the girl and the dog, and I wanted them each on their own little panel. Then I'm going to size this car to fit in there. And what I was saying about those score lines, you have to attach those to that little background before, and one at a time, but before you go to cut it out, those need to be attached. So back to the car. So I got my car sized the way I wanted it, and now I'm trying to resize the girl. And at first I wanted the girl to be small because I thought when you shut the card, if I could put a clear pane behind the glass, the window of the car, I wanted the girl to be look like she was in the car, and then when you open it up, then you would see her standing outside of the car, but it just didn't work out. So I found the shadow layer on the girl, and I pulled it out, and then I tried to put her all back together with her clothes. And then I'm going to attach that shadow layer by welding it to that card base. The only thing is with that little base is that you can't weld onto it when it has things attached to it. So I had to detach the score lines. Then I could weld the girl onto it. Then I had to reattach the score lines. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the dog. But with the dog, he didn't have a shadow layer. So I just duplicated the base layer and I used it like a shadow layer. And here's where I realized, hey, that head's just going to be floating on there. So I decided to make an extra body layer, and see, then that pretty much makes a shadow layer. I had to again detach the score lines and then reattach them after I had welded the dog's body on it. And then I decided that I wanted to make the dog a print and cut instead of cutting out all those little pieces. And the first card that I made, I did cut out all those little pieces and then I glued them on, and it was a little bit of a pain and a little bit of fussy because the dog was so small. And this time I felt like I'd made the dog a little bit smaller, so I wanted to just make it a print and cut. So I zoomed in on it so I could really get the pieces lined up, and I believe this is at 150%. I had to bring all those layers forward each time I selected one so that I could, line it up and it would look right. Once I had it all, I selected the whole thing and then I hit flatten. Now my screen doesn't show those options at the very bottom. I don't know why, but at the bottom right hand side there's an option to flatten that, and that's what I did. So my daughter had mentioned the other day that yellow is her favorite color. So I had originally chose blue clothes for the lady, but then I decided to go with yellow. And my daughter's hair, when she was little, we used to say it was peanut butter colored. So I'm trying to go for that color, even though her hair's kind of darkened up a little bit now. And so I flattened that top layer of the girl too, and then I just grouped it with the card so that I can move them around together. But that print and cut does not include that base layer. It is only the top part that is going to be a print and cut. Now I'm editing this car, and after the fact I'll do a little bit of cutting on that car to get rid of the tire on the back and the guitar on the top. So everything else right now I'm changing the colors. The television was two pieces. I ended up selecting them both and slicing just so that I could have that little TV exactly the way it is there, but I wanted a screen in it, so I cut a little black square or rectangle to fit inside the TV screen. Now I'm going through on the color sync, and I'm trying to get as few colors as possible so that I don't have to change out my mats a million times. So I've stuck with two grays, a white, and a black, and then I need the brown for the tree trunks and the mountain, yellow for the dotted lines, and then I use that for some of the cargo just to maximize my paper. The trees are green and then the black backgrounds. So here is a picture of what that print and cut looks like. And so I printed it on my printer and it puts that black bounding box around it. Right now my Cricut has a light and it's reading where those lines are so that it knows exactly where to cut. And there is a calibration on the machine. If it's not cutting quite right, you can recalibrate it so that it really cuts well. Also, there is a selection where you can make, I can't think what it's called right now, but it actually prints outside. Right there you can see there's still some printing left. So it cuts it out and it cuts all the way to the edge and there's no white spots. So it's a bleed. And so I did use the bleed on that. And so now I'm showing you the process. Like on the left side, it shows all of the different mats in the colors that you're going to want them. So first it's cutting out all my white papers. And it took me two pieces of paper or two cuts to cut out the white pieces. Now you can hit edit here and you can rearrange those pieces to maximize your paper. I didn't do that. I was kind of in a hurry, and like right on that last page, I could have rearranged things to save some paper. On this one, I had to put the pen in the pen holder to write out "You have arrived." And so in this project alone, I used the pen and the print and cut, and right there I was showing you how I hit the edit and I rearranged things so it wouldn't waste so much paper, and that actually could have been, I could have saved a little bit more paper there, and that's going to be another lesson on another day. So now I'm just going through all the different mats, and this is sped up obviously, but this shows you, you know, it lays it out for you so you can have your paper ready. And if you have more than one mat, you can be rotating them in and out and have your paper ready. So when it's ready for the next cut, you go. So there's the card, and you can see that box I was talking about. And so now I'm creasing the paper, and now I'm gonna put those mats down that we cut, and I just eyeball it. I don't really measure. I don't really do that. And all of the paper that I use is the Close to My Heart paper because I think it really cuts well with a Cricut, and so that's what I use always. I do have some Cricut paper, but I never used it really. I really like my Close to My Heart paper. So that's the art glitter glue, and I put it in a fine tip bottle, which I've had forever, so I don't even know where I got it. And then that's the Tombow permanent adhesive runner that I get that from Close to My Heart too. Now this is that shorter piece that was cut exactly like the card base, but then I made it smaller or shorter. And then where the folds of the card base are on the left, on this we're going to have the folds of the card base on the right, and that's what makes that box. And then we're only going to adhere down the very left panel and the very right panel so that you know, if you glued it all the way across, it wouldn't open. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue down in between the dotted lines there, and that piece was just a hair bigger, and so I just cut it down with the scissors. And then I'm just matting that little strip with my pieces of road, and then I wanted my message on that far right side. And now you can see we're just going to tape that very left side, and I just kind of laid that up there so I knew where to put the tape. And I'm just going to adhere that down. And then I'm going to turn it over and actually put the tape on the back. And by laying it out flat and then putting that piece down, you know it's going to close properly. So there's the little base for the girl, and you can see it folds nicely because I put that score line in it. And then see, that's going to glue the side tabs, and you want to make sure you don't get glue other places, or you could glue your card shut. It's just not going to shut properly. So I put some of my permanent adhesive there, and those are those print and cuts. So then I'm just going to glue that little dog and glue him onto that insert. And then, and you can see like I spaced him where he's over at the right side, and then the girl I wanted closer to the left side. And my spacing on this card was a little bit different than the original one I made, but I like the end result. And there you can see the one on the left was one where I cut out all of the pieces and glued them all down, and then the second was a print and cut. So you can just see it's a similar look, but it's not exact. But the print and cut is, oh, it's so easy. I love it. So there I was just seeing where the car is going to go, and I did not glue down all of my background pieces. And I kind of like to have that road there to see where some of them, like this bridge, is going to go. But really the part where the mountains go, the little insert got in the way, and I ended up having to remove it, and then I got glue where I didn't want it, and so it was a little bit of a nightmare, but in the end it worked out. So here I'm just gluing my layers of the mountains together, and then I'm going to put tape on the back of it, and what it was it stuck up a little too high, and so then I needed to tuck it back behind my little inserts, and so I ended up having to peel them off. And that Tombow permanent adhesive really is fairly permanent. Now if you move things around right away, it's fine, but if you wait too long, it's just going to rip your paper. So you want to do it right the first time. So there I'm just kind of fiddling with it. Like I said, my little tabs on the inside were folded just slightly too close to each other, and so I ended up kind of refolding them at while they were in there, but then I had over shot the glue a little bit, and so it was sticking a little. So I'm just rubbing with my finger to get some of that extra adhesive off of there. And now I'm working on the trees, and that's that Close to My Heart paper. The new paper is a different color on the back than the front. It's the same color, it's a different shade. So I decided to have the smaller tree a little lighter because it was going to be in front, and so I thought it would look more like the light was hitting it, not to put too much, thought into it. But and then the one in the back is darker, and I thought it just adds a little interest. So now I'm going to glue the pieces of my Route 66 together. And once I had this on there, I thought, oh, that was just a hair bit big. And the first one that I made was just a little bit smaller, and I think I liked it better, just a little bit smaller. And I'm not measuring or anything on that 66. I just glued it on there, and it's good enough for me. So, and I'm using the glue. I could have used the tape, but I used the glue. And now I'm going to put my pieces together on my car, and then you'll see in a minute how I cut off the guitar off of the top, and then I put the TV on top instead. And it has these little straps. I put that on white paper so you could see my pieces better because they were sitting on that black mat. So I'm trying to show you here that there's some little cut guides that are on that car that will help you know where to glue the pieces. And then I realized that that piece went on top of the green piece, and it was supposed to be layered, and so I got it off quick enough that it didn't rip my paper. So now I continued on, and now I'm going to cut off where the guitar is. And then also on that layer, that's a little strap that holds it on. It had little pieces of the guitar on it too, or something else that was behind it. So the one strap was fine. I went ahead and glued it on, and now I decided I put a little glue around the edge of that TV screen, and then I put the TV on top of it. And some of the glue is showing, but it's not going to matter. And then I've got some of these Nuvo crystal drops, and it's black, and it dries shiny. So I just kind of snaked it on there, and then I'm going to use my tweezers and the scissors and just kind of tap it and help it to kind of spread out and smooth out a little bit, and then let it dry. And really, I should have done that very first, and it probably would have been dry by the time I got everything else glued together, but I didn't think about it. So learn from my mistakes. So then I cut off that spare tire on the back, and now I'm cutting on that shadow layer. I cut off the guitar shadow, and now I'm gonna, I grabbed a paint pen, and there's some little cutouts where some lights would be, and so I just colored those in with a paint pen. And then I'm just impatient, and that's not dried, but I'm just gonna go ahead and glue it on, being very careful of that screen, not to put my finger in it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and glue that strap over the top of it. And it did kind of mush into the TV a little bit. Oh, I grabbed a white gel pen, and I put some highlights on the bumper and on the tires and then on the window. And then I did decide just to go ahead and bite the bullet and glue that strap on, and it went over that screen, and it kind of mushed into it a little bit, but it looks fine. And if I didn't point it out, probably nobody would ever notice. So I'm trying to get my position, and I put too much tape down there, and there's some under the tires. So I just used my finger and then that little adhesive remover to remove some of the excess. And that concludes my project for the day. There's both of the cards that I made. Thanks a lot for joining me. Stay tuned for my website and information.